What is a smart factory? So this is a very generic question, right? So what is a smart factory? I would say a smart factory is where you have the right level of automation and the right level of digitalization inside a factory to maximize its output. So it really depends on what you're producing, the level of technology that is inside the factory. A smart factory doesn't necessarily mean a very expensive factory, but yeah, it's a right balance between what human can do and what the technology can do to maximize its production. Will robots take over manufacturing? I think the question is not if, is more when. Probably things are going to be a little bit like what happened in the last 30 years where machines and robots took the place of simple tasks and then more complicated tasks and more complicated tasks. What's going to happen is probably that new robots, new technology are going to be able to do more tasks than human can actually do today, but are not necessarily done by robots today. Then is it going to reach 100%? We never know. Probably it will get close to that. That's how I would answer this question. Will reshoring happen? Probably yes, for many reasons. I think the world is more fluid than ever before. It's easy to move, easy to transport, easy to produce somewhere and then bring the value to somewhere else. But there's no reason at some point why someone in America, someone in Europe, and someone in Asia would not earn the same amount of money doing the same task. So this gap is reducing. So at some point, it will not be as interesting to produce outside and then to necessarily produce in low-cost countries. Once all countries will reach, I would say, a similar level of richness, of wealth, then reshoring will happen naturally. What is the biggest waste in manufacturing? It's hard to tell. I think it's time. If I have to say something, I would say time. Because you can do pretty much anything in a factory. You can invest, you can change the processes, you can work on management routines, you can use technology, and the common objective of all this is to improve productivity, improve efficiency, but it takes time and money is time. So time is what I would say the biggest waste. So how can you reach this very good level of productivity as fast as possible? Okay. Why are most things made in China? So I think this is not necessarily true. I think China is producing a significant chunk of what we're using on a day-to-day basis. Why? For many reasons. First, it used to be pure labor cost. So China 20, 30 years ago was extremely competitive from a cost perspective. Now it's more around Southeast Asia and India where we're going to see this cost competitiveness. China is more expensive. Now, what is good about China is that they have excellent workers, excellent technology, very good factories, very good technologies, and costs have increased, but the trade-off is still very good. So this is why a lot of things are still being produced in China. Now, I don't think we are seeing right now a lot of investments for factories in China. It's reducing, or mostly for the internal market, but it's a very, very good country to produce things like CPUs, everything related to electronics, computers, cars. They have a lot of things where they are very good at, and I think it's going to be hard to beat them in the coming years. Why can't factories find workers? I don't think it's a general thing. I think it's not necessarily true. I think it depends on the type of worker and where you are in the world, right? In Europe, you are going to have a lot of people that can work in factories. Maybe they don't want to, but you're going to find the people that work in factories. But if you look on specific vertical, for example, maintenance, in France, it's very hard to get. In the US, it's going to be more or less the same problem. Highly qualified people being able to take care of robots is not easy to find. So there are some types of profiles and peoples that indeed are very hard to find. And why? I think the question is hard to answer in 30 seconds, but it's probably because we were not prepared by the change of technology 20 years ago. So the people that are working right now in factories had to be trained 10, 15, 20 years ago, and the whole education, the whole ecosystem had to be prepared, and it was not in many parts of the world. So yeah, we need to think right now about where we want to be 10 to 15 years from now, and then we're going to have the right people to take care of the factory. How do you reduce your downtime? The question is, do you really want to reduce your downtime? Because sometimes it doesn't make sense. But if you really want to reduce your downtime, I think the first thing is to really understand what's happening. You need to connect your factory. It doesn't make sense to have a human track machines or track production lines. So you need to connect these production lines, these machines. Many great systems exist. And then from there, you will be able to understand what is affecting this particular production line, and then you can start to work on actions that are going to maximize your return on efforts, your return on money, and then from there naturally you will reduce your downtime. So this is how I would proceed. First get clarity, and after build action plan. This one is 85% OEE realistic? So yeah, why not? I think again it depends on what the type of thing you're producing. We have many clients over 95% of OEE, so this does exist, especially in the automotive world. On specific line, people are excellent at having a very high uptime and very high productivity. Then a lot of our clients have lines under 30% OEE. Then the 85% target seems to be probably a bit high. It really depends on the context, but 85% OEE is realistic in several factories. Do tariffs help manufacturing? It does in a certain way, because it's going to make local factories more cost competitive than remote factories because of the tariffs. But at the same time, it's going to naturally increase cost, because the way it works with tariffs is that you're going to put a penalty on cheaper factories so that your own factories that are a bit more expensive can compete. At the end, the consumer is going to pay. Then it's a matter of choice. Do you want the society to pay for less competitive factories or more expensive labor? And then just as a consequence, going to be reduce their buying power. So yeah, this is how tariffs work. Historically, this has never been very good on the long term. So what I would suggest is to use them very, very carefully on things that you know that the competition is not fair. And then the real objective is to have your local factory as competitive as possible. How do you increase productivity? I think the most logical way of increasing productivity is leveraging the lean mindset. How does the lean mindset work? Is that every task, every production line, every machine has added value or non-added value time. When you start to think in that way, you know that the machine is producing good parts is added value, the rest is non-added value, and then you need to understand this non-added value and try to reduce it as much as possible. This has been proven the best way to increase productivity by playing it negatively, so reducing what we would call the waste. Why is my production line always stopping? I don't know. I just don't know. I don't have an answer. You should connect your machine. How do you calculate OEE? There's no worldwide standard around OEE. There's some standards locally in countries about OEE. How I would describe OEE is the amount of time you're producing good parts divided by the amount of the time you were planning to produce these parts. So this is if I had to say a generic description of what is OEE, this is this percentage in this ratio. Will AI replace factory workers? I think there's something missing in this question. which is the link between AI, the workers, and it's the physical world, right? So it's going to be robots, it's going to be things that will physically replace workers. So some workers are indeed just operating the machines and they're not doing a physical work. Probably that at some point, yes, AI will replace them. Then if you think about workers that are doing a physical task, at some point you will need to have a robot or something that is going to do their work, and probably these robots will be partially operated by AI. So the answer is probably yes. When, it's hard to tell, but it's not if, it's more when it's going to happen. What is the difference between OEE and TEEP? So going back to the OEE definition, OEE is going to be the production time of good parts divided by the time you are planning to produce these parts, where TEEP is going to be the production times of good parts over 7 days a week, 24 hours per day, 52 weeks per year. So the ratio is going to be slightly different, and it will also represent something different. OEE is more about more about describing how productive you are on a production time or planned production time, while TEEP will show how good your asset utilization is. I knew that question. Is manufacturing dying? No. It will never die. As human, we need to have an interaction with our physical world. Going to wear clothes, transportation, we're going to live in houses, we're going to use objects. So for that reason, we're always going to have something producing hardware, unless we're all sitting in I don't know what could be the future, but I would say for the next 100 years, I'm not too worried about the fact that manufacturing is still going to exist. How much does downtime actually cost? This I don't know. So this question is very good. I think it really depends on the production line. We have seen some machines that are going to produce parts that are very close to what we would call a commodity, and then it doesn't really matter if it stops a little bit. The downtime is not going to be too expensive, especially if it's not blocking the whole factory. And then you have other production line where if they stop, everything stopped. The whole factory is going to be affected. So I've seen several times production line where 1 minute could be thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. So this has to be taken into account also when we start to deploy technology to know if we're going to have a huge impact or not when we try to improve machine productivity. What is Industry 4.0? So the definition is well known, right? So I would say it's the next step over Industry 3.0. 3.0 was mostly about bringing automation, robots inside factories, more automated machines. 4.0 is about connecting these machines, bringing more connected also robots and tools inside factory. I don't think there's a clear cut between 3, 4, and probably we're going to have 5 or 6 in the future. But I think the fact that computing powers, communication, wireless communication, a lot of things are now available inside factories. It's opening a broad range of things broad range of opportunities you can have inside factories. So this is how I would describe Industry 4.0.